Radio Free Skaro!
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio Free Skaro, episode number 952. I'm Steven in Edmonton.
Warren in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
It's first off, Chris Chapman is on the show today talking about his documentary, which I'm really looking forward to, about Graham Williams, The Lifetimes of Greg Williams, as well as his other stuff on season 15, which comes out in the UK on Monday, March 18th. Some people have already got their copies already. We're still waiting until July.
Typical.
We still don't have season 20 here yet. So.
Yeah, this is the sacrifice we're making for you folks here in Canada, is that we are doing previews of stuff that we don't even get to see for another few months. This is how mistreated Canada and the rest of the world has been in regards to Doctor Who.
Who could say?
Until now,
How will we get our comeuppance?
Right.
So they get their comeuppance.
The big news, obviously, announced this past Friday, March the 15th. Doctor Who premieres May 11th, midnight, GMT on iPlayer.
BST.
Is it BS? Well, it's a GMT in the press release. So I'm just going with that. But it is BST by that time, isn't it? Right, the summertime. Anyway,
yeah, because
midnight. Could we just say midnight? Can we not? Do we
midnight,
not?
Sure, because
I don't care.
The UK changes their clocks later in March.
I don't care when they do it. By the time May rolls around, it's done.
Yeah.
Midnight UK on iPlayer and on Disney Plus around the world, except Ireland. So Doctor Who time for us now is, for Chris and I, 5 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Warren, you can watch it right at 4 o'clock Pacific time.
Kind of awesome, actually.
And then it'll premiere later on that evening it'll air. It won't premiere on BBC One. Coinciding this time around with the Eurovision Grand Final. 2 episodes. 2 will drop. I like how I'm seeing people in the UK on Twitter. Please stop saying dropping. Stop saying drop.
Why? Why not? Why not say drop?
The UK is having a real one right now, folks, because they're used to watching Doctor Who on BBC One after one show and before another show, and those days are officially over. Long have I sort of said, maybe it's time that we look towards streaming as opposed to being beholden to an overnight viewing figure. Those days have finally arrived. Your thoughts, gentlemen,
with
on this development
from the British public, or a certain vocal segment of the British public.
Well,
middle-aged males.
The absolutely amazing part to me in all of this is the complete lack of understanding of time zones and how they work and what they are. Like I was reading what was it? I think it was probably a Doctor Who Google alert this morning.
All right.
Of an article from the Manchester Evening News, I believe it was. And everyone's in an uproar because the rest of the world gets Doctor Who before the Brits do.
We don't get it before.
Show.
We don't get it before. They get the exact same time we do.
We don't.
Yeah. They probably read that on May 10th where we're available, and they probably thought, no, we can't. That's not allowed.
May 11th is the same time.
Yeah.
But also, my thought is, I didn't see a problem with it, because for me, like when Star Wars stuff would drop at midnight, I'm like, well, I'm not staying up to watch that. I'll just watch it over breakfast, which is what I would do. So I just watch The Mandalorian, eat some cereal, and get on with my day.
Or I think it was The Mandalorian. Oftentimes it'd be like 3 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
when it would
I'm not
drop our time. Like
that's dumb.
Middle of the night.
They altered it before. Yeah.
If somebody's mad they have to stay up till midnight, that's a them problem, not a Disney Plus problem.
Well, I don't think it's that they're mad they have to stay up till midnight. I mean, lots of people do anyway, I'm sure, but it's that there's concern about spoilers.
Well, then get off the internet. As I've said before, there's a random tweet I read once which perfectly encapsulates our age, which is 90% of your problems can be solved by just putting your phone down. Like, just don't look at your phone. It's that simple.
That's my philosophy, and I've gotten into discussions with several people, including your good wife, Steven.
Okay, all right.
About the whole just stay off the internet if you don't want to be spoiled.
Well, I mean,
it's harder and harder and harder and harder. Like back in, back when like even say series 6, which was at the time for us the best because we got it later in the day versus the BBC. So like it was day and date, but there was a time shift, and people who would complain about not being able to watch it on the BBC and have to wait till BBC America or Space did it, however 8 hours or whatever later. 2011, a little easier to stay off the internet than it is nowadays. Or I still remember when the second Whittaker New Year special went out, and right as soon as the end credits finished rolling, John Barrowman's on Twitter talking about, "Oh, did you see my return?" and all that kind of stuff. And everyone and a whole bunch of people just lost their bleep at him on Twitter.
Well, I mean, there are plenty of other
stuff
things to get mad about with that guy,
because they hadn't seen it yet because it hadn't been on BBC America.
I will give a little pushback to that, which is given how crappy all social media is nowadays, it's easier. Like, I'm not on Twitter. Really I barely look at Facebook. If somebody spoils it on Blue Sky, I might see it. That's about it. Or Instagram. Like, and those are the two that I can just not look at those. Like, I don't even look at Twitter anymore. So thanks to Elon Musk, it's easier to not get spoiled. The one thing that guy did right, making his platform terrible. I
can sense, the sense of ownership that British fans have had over Doctor Who, for the last 60 plus years. I can sense that that's sort of ending now because, but I don't look at it. I mean, bear with me, UK listeners. It's just the way of the world now is that things, we've said this for quite a while during the Whittaker era. The Doctor Who was like the last show to do this, basically like beholden to a broadcast time, and that's when people watch it. And then, and every other show just basically just drops episodes at midnight or whenever.
Didn't Downton Abbey do that? Downton Abbey would be the other one, I guess. Like, there's probably a couple
that's
others.
Old. That's done, though. It's done.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that there are certain shows still, but not very many, and most of them are live.
Yeah.
The main exception I would throw against that would be reality TV stuff. So be it Survivor, Strictly, or things like that, where there is there is that set date. There's a set date and time when you gotta watch.
It's reality TV, the competition shows, sports obviously is your live. That's it though. That's it. That's your live show. I mean,
can't
Disney
spoil
has
news, though.
Yeah, Disney has kind of altered it in that they are dropping their episodes that they do anyway, like Mandalorian and whatever other Marvel shows that nobody watches anymore. Like drop it like 7 p.m. Pacific or something like that. And I feel like the midnight drop is like the compromise. This is Disney really flexing their muscles. Basically, they are saying we are dropping it at midnight. We are we don't want to have it at 11:55 on a Saturday morning anymore. That was us sort of playing nice with you for the Tenet specials, but here's also how we're doing this.
Those specials didn't have Disney money, and this does, and that's the other thing. The Brits may not like this, but Disney's footing a bunch of the bill for this, so they it's only fair they should have some say as to how they do it if they're paying for it.
But so is Sony with their investment in Bad Wolf. But they're not.
Sony purveyors of good advice, like let's expand the Spider-Verse too. Bad choice of words because the Spider-Verse films are good, but those other Madame Web et al.
Disney is doing distribution that Sony is not.
Good point.
So we rag on Australia here and there just because it's fun. It's okay, Australia, we do love you.
Do we?
But there's
more of a New Zealand person. But anyway, go on.
I do prefer the New Zealand accent.
Right, New Zealand is to Australia like Canada is to the U.S. So
I'm not going to get involved with this. I'm not getting anywhere near this.
Yeah.
Especially with the rise of Taika Waititi and the prevalence of New Zealand accents out there.
That's actually working against it, I think. But
anyway, so two Australian things came to mind. Number one, with Doctor Who now premiering at midnight in the UK.
Right.
The best places to watch Doctor Who on launch are now North America and Australia.
Yeah, so they had a quick little thing on social media, which had basically a rundown. Like, it was very quick, and our friend Riley grabbed a screen grab, which I grabbed of her, to post in here. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see. First off, can I point out, so it's 4 p.m. Los Angeles, 7 p.m. New York, 7 p.m. Toronto. We were acknowledged. Canada was acknowledged, even though it's the same time zone as New York.
I wondered to myself, is this a sly homage to the Seeds of Death? Are they just listing cities that they listed? Of course,
exactly
they are,
what it is. London, Paris,
New York, London, Paris, Munich.
Everybody talk about pop music. Rome as well, and then Sydney, as you said, Chris, 9 a.m. Not a bad time. Well done, Sydney, on May 11th.
On a Saturday morning. Like, hey,
Asia does not exist. Africa does not exist.
No.
Sorry, people in Western Australia, you're getting a bit of a shaft.
Okay, listen, there's like 8 different time zones. Yeah.
No, and daylight savings in Australia is the most wackadoodle thing on the planet.
Please don't explain it.
No,
I don't. Yeah. But the other thing was when, like during Jodie Whittaker era, for example, Australia would premiere the episode on iView at stupid o'clock in the morning, right after it finished airing on the BBC.
Right.
And then it would be 3-4 days later before they'd air it on a Thursday night for the broadcast premiere. Obviously, the BBC is doing things a little more tightly, having it later the same day, not days after the fact. But just when this all dropped, I'm like, it's kind of what Australia's been dealing with for the past few years.
Yeah, I know. It's still a weird hybrid where they're still like keeping that Saturday night slot a thing for people watching. And you know what? Maybe families will go, let's watch Doctor Who later. Maybe ones who aren't like scouring the internet, who just like to watch TV on a Saturday night and will gather around as a family and watch it. Maybe other people will watch it again. You never know.
Not everyone's a maniac like us.
No.
So when we had the Tenant specials, we had consistency in broadcast times. They were all at the same time.
Yeah, I feel like Disney Plus had a hand in that too.
Absolutely. But traditionally, Doctor Who has been, 6:55 p.m., 5:35 p.m.
Dumb times, yeah.
There isn't any consistency that streaming can deliver. Like, if it premieres at midnight and you want to watch it as a family at, say, 4 o'clock before you make supper,
still can,
cool. Go for it.
Yeah, I love it that, it's no longer like, oh, when is it going to be? When is it going to be after this or after this? We don't have to worry. It doesn't fluctuate every 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's your time.
Exactly. Now. What happens if it's after some football match and that goes into, that runs along or whatever. Like there's a lot of things that can and will and have happened with broadcast television that just don't come into play on streaming.
I have to sit through Don't Scare the Hair, allegedly, via VPN,
or Tumble.
allegedly also.
For instance, since this 2 episodes premiering on May 10th/11th,
including your Beatles episode, Stephen.
Oh my God! It's not even so much the Beatles drum set, but there's a brief look in the trailer.
Let's be honest here.
This episode might break me. This might break me. Is that it's only a couple seconds, but they said let's go and record, and it's like John, Paul, George, and then Ringo's in the back on the inaccurate drum set, and like George is on his guitar, his electric guitar.
Some guitar nerd is like very angry with you right now.
Paul's on his Hofstra bass, both electric, and then there's John just sitting there with his acoustic guitar in front of a mic. They're standing three across as if they're performing for the sound booth. There's no mic anywhere for John's acoustic guitar.
That's what they're doing.
There's no separation. This is not how you record things in the studio. It's so wrong. That episode is going to kill me. It is so wrong about how you do any. It's like if you were like, you two cats are like, computer tech. It's like, it's like having someone there on his I don't know, Mac G4 or whatever year that was or something like that. and
my
then
version
somebody
of
else
this-
is on, like, opens up his laptop and let's go. No, that is wrong. That is
My
not how
version, I
you do
think
these things.
Chris will agree with me on this. Is
Right.
when the first Matrix came out, amongst the many other things you can praise about that movie,
Right.
she opens up Unix, and it's actually Unix. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not Jurassic Park, and that actually apparently is a Unix system
Yeah.
that nobody ever used. Right? Oh, it's
Right.
Unix. I know. She actually just fires it up. I'm like, oh, this is actually for real. They're doing it accurately. Like, holy crap, I can't believe it. Maybe some Unix nerd could tell me otherwise, but it looked pretty
Right.
real to me compared to everything else people still do.
And before we started recording, Warren and I, at least, Stephen, you're off changing your hockey jersey for the 8th time.
Right.
We're talking about just how
Choices.
badly technology stuff dates. Like
Yeah, Matrix doesn't, surprisingly. Out in the phone.
Matrix is one of the exceptions, but like
Sure. That's
the
not my
net,
point
the
here,
net,
but
or
yeah.
hackers, or whatever, but or Johnny Mnemonic or the like. But yeah, there's a lot of technological problems with things like that. So we've had to deal with it, Steven. So now it's
Yeah,
your turn with the
exactly.
And
music.
now it's my turn about how to, it just like obviously it's not like.
Is this?
Anyway,
is this,
anyway,
hold on.
I'm just hoping there's an episode coming up where instead of like Jimmy Page, they have like, I don't know, Jim Morrison as part of Led Zeppelin.
Is
It'd
this
just be,
your
you know,
version of the Strange New Worlds Enterprise set looking different than the TOS episode set?
Well, kind of a little bit, except there's like this is. We'll get to it. I will note that'll be a double episode of Radio Free Skaro where we're and
I'll be
literally
checking out for a lot of that.
44 minutes will be going.
And,
okay, here's the
stay-
problem.
Stay
about
tuned
that.
after for the Radio Free Skaro spinoff starring Steven and Steven alone called
Yep.
What Really Grinds My Gears.
I'm gonna have to put together a 5-hour YouTube essay
God.
on what was wrong with that. Anyway,
that's you've signed up for it now. It's a contract.
we got derailed, unsurprisingly, by this.
You
but
got derailed.
The
Actually.
two
episode premiere.
episodes coincide with the Eurovision grand finale. We're talking about how it
they don't
interacts with
coincide.
live stuff.
No.
Well, it's the
They're
same
before.
the same day.
Same
so
day.
what is the process, Chris? Because you're a Eurovisionist. You have people over, you get drunk, you watch for the whole day. What is the process for the Eurovision Grand Final,
described
and where would Doctor Who fit in there? Considering you have to fit 2 episodes in on BBC One, technically before the final. So is there lead up and stuff before
I mean,
that? Or what?
there's no real process. It's a show. It comes on at a specified time, like any other show.
Right. What time is that? What time does it start at?
8:00 UK time.
That's when the whole Eurovision starts.
That's when the original kickoff is 8:00 UK time. So, depending, as far as Doctor Who is concerned, depending on how long the episodes run, so let's say they're an hour a piece or 55 minutes a piece or something,
Right.
presumably they'd go out at 6, 7 o'clock, or
Gotcha.
you know, give or take.
Oh, okay, I got you. So they're not reliant on a live event happening. It's happening before Eurovision and not after, which means that's probably
Yeah, because if it was after Eurovision runs. Well, Eurovision generally runs long, but the grand final is usually these days 4 to 4.5 hours.
Ugh.
So if
Wow.
it starts at 8:00, it's not going to wrap up till midnight or after.
Right.
Oh,
I got to be honest with you. I am looking forward to, Warren, bear with me on this.
I
I'm
don't know if I
looking
can.
forward to hearing what the overnight viewing figures are.
Of course you are. I thought you were talking about looking forward to Eurovision.
Because they're less relevant now at all because it's on iPlayer first. And but I'm just curious how many people will still watch or will watch again on BBC One on that Saturday night. I am legitimately curious. Yes,
Okay,
Warren.
this is the one way I'm interested. I want to see if that is used by these angry middle-aged white men to say, you see, it's the viewing figures have never been lower.
Yeah.
You've got to change this, BBC and Disney immediately. I, Leah and Ian Levine have spoken.
Yeah.
So to that end,
right.
we
we have the change. Are they going to shut the F up?
No, of course not. They never.
No, the Daily Mail will probably be out there. So, oh, look at this, Doctor Who ratings collapse or something because it moved to streaming. As if to say, well, yes, because people watch it on streaming. Daily Mail, this is why the viewing figures has probably fallen because people are watching it on streaming. You dolts.
Are you saying the UK press has a tenuous relationship with the truth? Because I don't know if I believe that.
Quite possibly. I am intrigued to see
Certain
how that plays
segments
out.
do.
though.
Anyway.
Certain segments, yeah. To be fair.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for us, I mean, it's so weird to have Doctor Who's going to be Friday nights, Friday 5 p.m.
Good.
Okay,
If you
so-
want to watch
Wonderful.
it drop absolutely live. Yeah.
It's going to be May. It's going to be May and June that we
Right.
have this.
Yeah.
It's still going to be daylight for us.
Oh, yeah.
Because watching.
Listen. In
watching-
June,
watching
you could drop it at midnight our time in June, and it would still.
It'll still be daylight.
That's true.
Here in
That's true.
Alberta.
Also, it's one thing to be entitled about when they premiere this in England. It's another to go, it's still daylight. Why is the planet not
Yeah.
agreeing with my viewing preferences?
Well, because
Yeah.
during the Tenant specials with us watching them at, what was it, 11 a.m., noon,
Something
whatever,
like that.
Whatever.
That's
the heck it
normally
was.
when I end up watching it. So yeah.
Like if you're watching it as it becomes available, then yeah, because I mean, one of the watching Doctor Who in the daylight is honestly less enjoyable than watching.
Well, then close
in
your
the
blinds.
evening.
It's real simple.
Oh,
We do our
It's
best.
Not that tough.
Yeah.
dude,
It's going to be better.
I have
Yeah.
southern exposure. I could have blackout blinds and it wouldn't matter.
I have southern exposure
But-
too, but I actually don't care. I'll just watch it daily. It doesn't really matter to me. I'm not 10
But
hiding behind the sofa.
But I mean, does that mean? But I guess the beauty of that is, if I wanted to wait in a few more hours till maybe dusk or something, I could do that now.
It's incredible.
You have the
You're
power.
even
I just
more
have to
entitled
stay
than a
off the
Brit.
internet.
It's breathtaking, actually.
You could stay off the internet now. I mean, let's face it. If at all possible, I will be watching it at 5 o'clock.
Of course you will.
Friday.
I'll be watching it at 4 if I can.
100% will.
Absolutely.
Because
my,
we can.
My,
you know?
my work schedule will dictate my ability to do so. But I mean,
Yeah, that's
if I'm
true,
able
yeah.
If
to,
it's in
sure.
front of me, are you really going to stop? Come on.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Exciting times. And also, I just like, the I don't know if this is the first time ever, but, because often Disney and BBC have maybe sort of like coincided on their press releases, but they each had different ones. It's funny. It's just amusing to see like, Burbank, California being the headline of the
That is a little
Doctor Who
weird.
press release for the Disney Plus one.
Not to mention just the whole necessitation of Disney's press release debuts May 10th. BBC's premieres 11th May.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they do mention that on both of them. But the interesting thing is, a brand new trailer from Disney Plus will debut Friday.
It's coming Friday. Yeah.
March 22nd. We'll talk about it in the next episode of Ready for Skaro, obviously. No mention of that trailer in the BBC version. So I am imagining that they might show it with BBC branding at the end or something like that. But it seems to be exclusively a Disney Plus trailer.
oh,
And
that'll cause even more consternation.
I'm wondering if that will show up on Disney Plus as well, perhaps on the new page, because they also mention further down. Where did it say here?
It'll show up on
Something about-
YouTube as well, so anybody can see it.
It'll be on YouTube. You'll be able to see it, but just like it just the fact that it's being mentioned on the Disney Plus one. But it also in the Disney Plus one, in the first paragraphs, audiences will return to The Church on Ruby Road, the episode which premiered last December, and journey through 2 all new episodes. I'm wondering if Church on Ruby Road now sort of gets folded into a new folder, so to speak, on Disney Plus,
Yeah.
where that's episode 0 of season 1, essentially, and so you can watch that, and that'll, as opposed to appearing as special 4, which it is right now, which is unhelpful,
Like Warren said, they're just renaming the playlist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah,
Which is fine, whatever.
yeah. So that's kind of cool and exciting, and yeah, the BBC one has a lot. I feel like the BBC one sort of had to go through a lot more to sort of like say, this is how it's going to work. This is how it's going. We can watch it here, but you can still watch it there. Don't worry.
Or
It's
even-
still,
Even other differences, like the BBC one saying, the BBC one,
Right.
BBC one saying,
yeah,
that's
We know what
just
you mean.
awkward.
yeah,
The BBC press release mentioning very specifically things like Michelle Greenridge as Carla Sunday, Angela Winter as Cherry Sunday, and Anita Dobson as Mrs. Flood, versus
Yeah.
the Disney Plus one just saying person, no
Right,
roles.
yeah.
Well, 'cause
It's
nobody
just
knows who they are,
actor.
comparatively.
yeah. Well, they list the actors, but they don't list the roles, whereas the
Yeah.
BBC version
That's what I just said. Yeah.
partially lists the roles. So I explained to Warren here. But
Oh.
But the names mean more to a Brit than they do to an American reading that, I think,
Yeah.
or Canadian
But-
for that matter.
I mean, some might.
yeah, but they're entirely different press releases, even though Russell T Davies has, I think, the same quote in both. Yeah, it does. Yeah, same quote for both from RTD. So,
And also, I just noticed. Also, just noticed as well, the Disney one lists a bunch of the directors, and
They do?
the BBC one does not.
how interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. Well, so what, I know what you're asking. What does this mean for Radio Free Scaro's plans? Probably not changing that much. I don't know. We'll do our live stream reviews. We don't know when they're going to happen at this point right now. That all depends on work schedules and other schedules and stuff like that. So
life happens.
Life happens and everything. So we don't even know when it's going to happen because Chris is so heavily involved in Eurovision. We don't know when he'll be.
Yes, it's all his fault.
Coherent and available enough to talk about 2
drunk
episodes.
as a skunk on that day. So
Yeah. We'll
Much
see.
as I dislike Eurovision, getting drunk because of Eurovision makes a certain sort of sense.
I mean, that does kind of make a lot of sense, actually.
well, thanks to the time zone shift. If nothing else, Warren, it's an excuse to day drink.
Yeah.
I just don't care about Eurovision. I never have and I never will.
That May 12th episode of Radio Free Scar will be a long one because we'll be reviewing 2 episodes of Doctor Who.
And there'll probably be a bunch of other hootenanny surrounding that too.
Lots of hootenanny. So, yeah.
Warren and I'll just step away for about 15 or 20 minutes as Stephen does his diatribe about the Beatles recording.
You can text
studio.
us and
will
edit it
happen.
out later. Come back.
Yeah.
It might happen. It might well happen. So, exciting times. Have we planned
It's
it
like,
out?
it'll be like Nigel Tufnell doing a guitar solo, and just everyone and Derek and David just leave the theater altogether.
Yeah. The sustain. You go have a bite. Still behind that one. Anyway, exciting times. Look at that, Doctor Who, and we know a date when it's going to happen. We were wrong about May 18th, but we also did not factor it. We were not factoring in it being on iPlayer first. That was something that we were not expecting, and so it's
we were right about them avoiding May the 4th, though.
That was true. Yeah, and
May 25th did seem too late.
It did seem too late.
And it's a big movie one, so yeah.
Yeah.
Oh shoot! What was I going to say?
I don't know, Chris.
There.
I cannot read your mind.
You can't. You can't.
I can't.
Probably for the best.
That's what it was. So we have an episode 2 title.
Devil's Cord. The Devil's Cord. Yeah.
CHORD.
As mentioned by RTD in the Doctor Who magazine production.
The improper drum kit is actually what was the original title.
But we don't yet have an episode 1 title.
No, we don't. No.
Or run times.
I wonder if these episodes actually tie in together. Because
or they just want to hold it back.
Or they just want to drop 2 and just say, there we go, we got 2 episodes. How much there'll be a tying in of the 2, who knows?
It's reasonably typical of streaming services to premiere a show or its new season with 2 or 3 episodes dropping on day 1.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
So,
and even like I was just saying off air that the Bad Batch just put out 2 episodes, episodes 6 and 7 on Wednesday. I don't know why they just did.
Really? 2 episodes at once?
Probably because they want to cram. I don't know how many more are left. Probably a couple, and then they probably want to get all that out of the way so they can go forward with whatever that is. Presumably, so they've got something else. I don't know. I'm not a Disney executive. I have no idea why, but usually it's a scheduling thing, right? So
I thought you were.
Yeah. Disney also, by the way, put out a new image, various different versions of it with Doctor Who and Ruby Sunday standing next to the TARDIS, and the little Disney Plus side is right at the light of the police box.
And I want to see that in universe. I want to see whenever the light goes on and off. I want to see that Plus show up just to promote within the show, just to watch the Brits lose their minds once again.
And in recognition of the diamond logo, trademark and copyright in 1873, I see you there as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's been on everything. Yeah, that time. Yeah, well done, Bernard Lodge, 1973. So there. That is the exciting news. The streaming. Also, I should say they also put a new image of Doctor Who and Ruby Sunday in. I have to. Listen. I love the TARDIS set and everything, but the corridor I feel is the least distinctive element of the set to be taking photos on, and it reminds me of the in the second episode of Blake 7. Spacefall, where they extend a tube across from the prison ship to the Liberator, and they have to go through this. Is all shot on Ealing, and they're walking through this sort of tube of cloth, essentially going across the ships, and it reminds me of that. Is what
But in order to have a cool lean for both characters, and those are both pretty damn cool
proper leans, prodigious leans, you might say. Yeah, you can only lean in this. You almost get the sense that the thing is actually a circular thing, like they shot 2001: A Space Odyssey on it or something like that. And It's just a curving thing. But anyway, that's a new image also that they released, which you saw if you're watching this on YouTube on our thing. So, on to other news before we get to Chris Chapman's interview about his documentaries on season 15. This is a big thing because it was reported wildly because it showed up on an agency website that's now been taken down. But the Radio Times, amongst many others, report Doctor Who's Steven Moffat returns to write 2024 Christmas special. It showed up on producer Alison Sterling's CV, saying that this was an episode that he was writing, directed by Alex Pillai, who directed many Midsummer Murders, for what it's worth. But this has been in the rumor mill for like a year, I think.
At least.
That is back, yeah.
That he's back for at least one episode. Yeah.
Despite his protestations, yes.
Yeah. I think it's pretty much a given now that Steven Moffat's coming. Also, there's a new companion, but don't talk about that either, because that's this is the problem when you're working so far in advance, is that new writers or old writers and returning writers and new companions will show up before you even see what the current writers or companions are doing. So yeah, very likely that Steven Moffat is returning, and I, for one, am intrigued to see what Mr. Moffat does after so many times.
Oh my,
yeah. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on that? Any other thoughts about Steven Moffat?
I want to see him completely upend both the Timeless Children and whatever RTD has cooked up. just his own thing. Tough,
I know. You see, they were
it.
hanging out the other day. They went to, I think, Chris Chapman has a play or something going on, and so they both went out to support the play. And
Salisbury,
I love seeing those guys bro it out
Yeah.
together. That's awesome.
Yeah, they just hung out. They just like, look, Moffat posted on his Instagram, and a new series, The Last of the Summer Wine. There's three old guys there.
Drinking wine.
Yeah, drinking wine out on a park bench at night. Don't want to read into that too much, but it's just nice. It's neat that all the three showrunners just sort of hang around. I mean, it might be more like Chris Chibnall is the Ringo Starr to this Beatles.
Hey, they all show ran Doctor Who. That is a very rare thing to have done. So
that's true. You know what? I'll say this.
Club.
Chibnall was on a Beatles podcast I haven't listened to. He's a big Beatles aficionado as well. And listen, I'm not going to disparage.
So he's going to be on your side with this drum.
I might want to get him on.
Are we gonna get him on for like point and counterpoint?
I just want to be
That'd
honest.
be great.
Listen,
I would love to see you two duke it out about this.
As showrunner,
silly
Chris Chibnall, would you have allowed this travesty of Abbey Road Studios?
Not loading that question at all now, are you?
Recreation happen, because we need to hear the real story about this, because it's just,
What they don't show you is that the Abbey Road crosswalk is now a rainbow crosswalk because Doctor Who's gone woke.
No, but it's got all the little jagged lines. You know how crosswalks look now? They have like these little weird, those strange lines. But the crosswalk's still there. I mean, people who try to do it.
As of 2015, I saw it, so yeah.
I never saw it when I was there. I never saw it.
Was there in 2016?
Well, my friend's partner lives literally a block down, so he just kind of came across it on the way.
Right. Yeah. Still kills 72 people a year trying to cry. No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
I bet you it does. I bet you a lot of people are going, okay, don't go by us to Abbey Road, because there'll be people walking across the street. You know how
various Rolling Stones run them over.
Warren, if you're talking about Len, I know he lives somewhere in that.
Yes, that is exactly what I was trying to preserve his privacy, but thanks, Chris.
Yeah, well done.
I'm not saying last name. So I'm not saying last name.
Lisa S? No, that's too obvious. L. Simpson.
L. Simpson. Yeah.
You are
Thompson.
Lisa Simpson. Come on.
Yeah, our good friend Kyle Anderson put up a video on the Nerdist, did a video for YouTube called "Regeneration Makes No Sense." It's a big long expose about how regeneration in Doctor Who has never really made any sense at all. It's very funny. Kyle's great on these Nerdist YouTube videos, and I like watching him.
I enjoy Kyle just being Kyle.
I do too.
I agree. Very much so.
Especially when he's like, let's set the controls of the TARDIS to October 1966, and just on a table going bleep bloop bleep bloop. Yeah, it's fun.
He's
I
fun.
miss Kyle.
Well, here's the thing. Well, Kyle will probably on this show when you're in the UK, Chris. So oddly enough, you will miss each other.
Possibly, but we missed him at Galley. So
I know we did miss him at Galley, and his wonderful sense of humor, which is very much present in this Nerdist YouTube video. So links in the show notes to watch it yourself. It's very fun. It's a lot of fun. Kyle's great at, and he knows his Doctor Who stuff too. So.
40 odd minutes well spent.
It's a big one. I know.
Which do you
regeneration.
Think? Going to our next thing about bi-generation, which do you think is the most weird and silly regeneration. And I think even though I'm not the hugest fan of Bi-Generation, I think The Watcher still makes even less sense. That's my probably top one for
It's
what
kind
the
of
hell.
odd now you think about it. But it was also my first experience with Regeneration.
Same here,
So,
yeah. But it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. Like, why is this dude floating around? Unless Bi-Generation kind of explains it a little bit.
I know you haven't had a chance to watch Kyle's video yet, Warren, but when he talks about Planet of the Spiders, he makes mention of the actors doing Yellowface.
Oh.
And doesn't want to show any of it, so he replaces it with the sock puppet Choji. And it's like the best thing ever.
Awesome.
It was great.
Yeah, the thing that Warren is alluding to, so the BAFTAs Memorable Moment Award are coming up. The 2024 P&O Cruises Memorable Moment Award at the BAFTAs. Doctor Who's Bi-Generation is a finalist for it, amongst something from Beckham, a scene from Happy Valley. The Last of Us, Bill and Frank's story, which is like the whole episode. I don't know, the moment, like it's across the whole episode, episode 3 of The Last of Us. Succession, Logan Roy dies in Succession. Spoilers for
who cares?
that. Something from the piano as well. So
that Beckham bit, I'm pretty sure is the source for that meme.
It's the Rolls Royce thing where she thinks they were working class, but they own a Rolls Royce or whatever.
I never saw the meme. I'm glad. I
didn't miss much.
No.
But the thing is,
knowyourmeme.com.
No, don't do that. Much as I think, my main problem with Bi-Generation is just that it's Russell T Davies going, I'm doing a thing, look at me do it, here's why it's awesome.
Right.
More than the actual thing itself, because he's right, it does lend itself to a whole bunch of other stuff. But it is a memorable moment whether you like it or not. It is memorable, for sure. So there is that.
True. Well, you can vote for it, Warren, if you want. It's the only thing that you've seen of those 6 things, I think.
Now they're letting Americans and Canadians vote in our BAFTAs. Indignity's never ceased.
I don't know why this guy's 100 and
I don't know why he's 100, but he's very angry, Warren. He's angry.
I'm so angry right now.
Portraying that anger. Chris went through the just to add stuff to our news list just before recording, so I'm less familiar with this stuff. I don't care. But there's a DNA of Doctor Who Volume 1 coming June 1st. There was a Kickstarter. Here's the thing: we couldn't remember if we talked about this Kickstarter or not when it happened. But it does sound familiar, but we couldn't find any evidence of it.
So it's the Philip Hinchcliffe here is the DNA of Doctor Who. Volume 1, which I guess implies it's Hinchcliffe is Volume 1, but there's multiple volumes covering multiple people. Right. So it's much like the say Outside In books, for example. It's a series of essays on the stories of the Hinchcliffe era.
Gotcha.
There's a 5-ish minute video link from the Kickstarter page in the show notes. Talking to Gary Russell, who's editing the book.
Good old Gary Russell.
With him mentioning how the genesis of the book was Hinchcliffe's idea, and the main thing they wanted to get out of it was different perspectives on Hinchcliffe's stories.
Right.
So
and there we go, and it's coming out June 1st, and there's even even though it was a Kickstarter, there's a spot for it on Amazon.
Because the Kickstarter is closed. So you can't order it through there, despite that being the link we have in the show notes. But it is going to be, at least in the UK anyway, it's going to be released as a separate thing.
Yeah. I guess that means the backers will get it through Kickstarter, and then everybody else gets it through Amazon.
Yeah. So I do recall seeing the images of this, and I remember Gareth Kavanagh, who's sort of behind it, like talked to me at Gallifreyan in 2022, the one that you two weren't at, and talked to me all about this. So it's been in the works for quite a while. So it's glad that it's finally has going to see the light of day. But looks
and there's, as with many of these compilations, there's a bunch of people that we know who are writing for it. So Toby Haydock, Matthew Sweet, Simon Garrier, Mick Schubert, David J. Howe.
Right.
But the one I really want to emphasize is The Robots of Death by Matt Dale, who we lost around Christmas time last year.
No, we did.
Fandom took a big hit with his passing, so it's nice to see that there's still stuff that he's worked on that is in the pipeline.
It is great. In other stuff that Chris has forged through Amazon.co.uk, there's a new book called Doctor Who: The Prequels, The Adventures Before. The cover says the prequels, but it's happening. It's due October 3rd. Where it asks the question, what did Osgood do the morning of the day of the Doctor? What happened to Tegan before Arc of Infinity? And why does it involve strange sentient lights in the Australia outback? And so forth. Basically, things that happened before things happened. This is the book for you to find out what those
I'd like
are.
to do a mea culpa from stuff we talked about off air, which is I was like, what's the source of this? Is this official? And then I realized my own ribbon that says there's no such thing as official pretend, quoting me on this very program.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter if it is official, but it doesn't matter if it is. I should mea culpa myself there.
Warren has. Well, I just want to point out that Warren has apologized for something he did not say publicly, but did say publicly now.
It reminds me of this.
You've just
funny comedian
Streisanded affected
influencer
your whole thing here. But
I follow, who did an apology video where she's just taking water out of a bottle and splashing on her face, and then starting to cry about whatever she's apologizing about. That's basically the level we're going with.
Gotcha.
Yeah, stuff like that makes me think of just Big Finish. And just the way they fill gaps in chronology and how there's like 8,000 stories that happen between Time Flight and Arc of Infinity.
That's true. A billion. Anyway, this is for kids reading age 8 to 15 years, which was right up my alley.
Wow, that's a cell phone I've never heard in a long time.
Probably. How many books I have and how many books I've read, Warren? Very little.
You ratioed yourself.
I just ratioed myself.
Before we get to the next thing, have you cracked the spine on the Whitaker book or the logo design book?
To be fair, I haven't either. So
I did a brief perusal through the
I did order 3 other books in the meantime, which I am reading. So
no, I'm a bad book reader. Even books that are made especially for me. Right? Yeah, right. Warren, you're bad too. But yeah, I mean,
No, I'm not. I'm way better than you.
You're pointing. You're shaming me.
I'm shaming you. Yeah.
Yeah. Doctor Who in Wonderland is another one. Embark on a strange and enchanting adventure with old friends and familiar foes in this glorious crossover of Doctor Who and Alice in Wonderland. What?
Public domain.
Public domain. That is due July the 25th. Also intended for children.
That harkens back to Disney, because that's how Disney built their animation forte, was going with old fairy tales that were public domain they could afford to do.
Yeah, this is not a Disney-related product, Frodo.
No, I know that. I'm just saying that this it's a weird parallel.
This Doctor Who in Wonderland apparently is third best ranked book in the time travel fiction for children category.
The arbitrary Amazon, probably machine-generated fiction category.
That's impressive, given that it hasn't come out for another 4 months. That's impressive indeed.
Yeah.
Impressive. A little Big Finish thing to drop. The Ninth Doctor, Star-Crossed, where the Ninth Doctor meets Alex Kingston as River Song. That drops
a cool robot
in May of 2024. Yes,
and what appears to be a robot styled after Deadpool.
I like that robot. And also Colin Baker's doppelganger is apparently
I know. I was thinking that, like Colin Baker as a sensorite in the image there. It's kind of interesting.
A sixerite, if you will.
Yeah, I like how Alex of River Song has sort of become like the Brigadier of modern Who, in that like we have to find a way the Brigadier to meet every single Doctor. And then, sadly, Nicholas Courtney passed on. But now Alex Kingston has to meet because, River Song has met every... Yeah, no, I agree. So I think...
First of all, it keeps Alex Kingston employed. Secondly, why the hell not?
Yeah.
So here's a what if. Let's say that Nicholas Courtney had gotten properly into a regular Colin Baker story, so the Brigadier had met the Sixth Doctor.
Right, not just Dimensions in Time.
Would we have had Dimensions in Time?
Oh God, yeah, they would. But I think they would have. They wouldn't have fought so hard to put Nicholas Courtney in a scene with Colin Baker.
You still would have had Panto nonsense.
Yeah, it would have still been ridiculous. Yeah, because they weren't like, we've never had John Pertwee and Victoria and Debbie Watling on the screen of the same. We have to put these two together. That's what would have happened.
The thing that bugs me the most about it is having Time Lords in London. I don't know why it does, but it just drives me mental. I couldn't tell you why.
Yeah, Dimensions in Time.
I mean, there's a lot of egregious nonsense in that, but for whatever reason, the Time Lord standing there makes me go, "What is this guy doing here? You had the costume. That's why he's here."
I feel like Big Finish should do a sort of a new version of that, an expanded version of Dimensions in Time.
No, I think you're wrong about that.
Thing they could do. No,
don't do it.
Yeah, we've got the voice actors to cover off Pertwee and others.
Well, that's a real use of resources. We need a redo of Dimensions in Time.
It is
Doctor Who's own fan film.
Yeah. On to other things, if I may. The Titan Comics has released images and artwork of the 15th Doctor's first issue, which is going to be on Free Comic Book Day on May the 4th. I think May the 4th. Coincidentally, not at all tied in with Star Wars, but Titan released 2 or 3 different pages of Shutigawa on comic book form.
Does it say who did the art? Because the art is nice.
The art is done by someone, Warren.
Helpful.
It's I had it written down. I tell you what, I do have it written down, Warren, and I will tell thee mere seconds from now.
All right.
It's the artwork is Kelsey
Ramsey.
There we go.
Colorist Valentina Bianconi. And the writer is Dan Waters. So there
Hopefully
you go.
Not related to Jesse Waters.
That's the free comic book edition is that one, but this might not be the artwork for that one. But the first issue of the actual proper 15th Doctor run on Titan Comics will go on sale June 26th. Coincidentally, mere days after the season finale of season 1 on Disney Plus. At 7 p.m. Eastern time.
I see here it's set at Shopping Mall on the last days of Earth. Please make it West Edmonton Mall, please.
No, it's going to be Heritage Mall here in South. Yeah,
those definitely were the last days of Earth.
They're going to bring back Heritage Mall, and I love shopping malls. I don't care what people say.
Deep cut for anybody who grew up in Edmonton in the 80s.
Welcome to all 6 of you who are listening to this, who remember Edmonton in the 1980s. Yeah. Last bit. Hey, tell you what, there's a new season 15 collection launch trailer, not done by Benjamin Cook this time around, but it's very good. It's they usually drop these on the weekend before the sets come out. Links in the show notes. So they only just hammer home the point that we don't have it yet. So I always watch them with slight can't watch this. Can't watch this. But the set does come out on Monday in the UK. Richard Bigmill posted, as he often does whenever a new set is about to come out, the contents of the PDF archive. There's tons of stuff. Studio floor plans.
You will read this.
Scripts, enterprise sales sheets, sales brochures, all of the 4,385 pages.
Stephen, I love paperwork.
Of material. I do love paperwork. Studio floor plans are the best. I love it. I love Videogram editing script. There's an editing script on there. For God's sake. Oh, bye. Looking forward to
Videogram editing.
Yeah.
What is that? What is a videogram? Don't answer that.
Don't even know. But that's all coming on March 18th, along with a couple of documentaries from Chris Chapman. I sat down earlier this month to talk to Chris Chapman about his documentaries, including the Graham Williams documentary on the season 15 collection. Here is that chat now. Chris Chapman has directed and produced almost countless documentaries that have appeared on Doctor Who DVDs and Blu-rays over the years, including touching and poignant profiles of Elizabeth Sladen, John Pertwee, and John Nathan Turner, among others. And it is in that vein where we welcome Chris on the show today to talk about Darkness and Light, the life of Graham Williams, a documentary on the late Doctor Who producer, which is featured on the Doctor Who Season 15 Collection Blu-ray. Chris Chapman, hello.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I am great. I think we spoke last, and for the first time, at a Gallifreyan one many years ago. I don't know if you remember that, but it's
yes, it would have been. So that would have been pre-pandemic then, kind of 2019.
I think 2019 or 18 or something there. Yeah, whichever one you went to. Yeah,
I had a good time. That was really fun. I think we Rob, Ritchie, and I were up on stage introducing clips from upcoming docs. I think, and then John Barrowman was coming straight up. He was coming straight after us. I remember exiting the stage, and John was already there in like a skirt and stockings or something, like ready to say, like, okay, but I don't know what you're going to do, but we've warmed them up now. Warmed them up with
clips of screen caps of behind the scenes and cameras and stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a notable documentary, Darkness Light. It even had its own screening at the BFI before the main season 15 event. It's a feature event. I think it's probably your longest documentary on a producer who we kind of don't know a lot about because he left us far too soon in 1990. So was it always in your remit and the back of your mind to do a big documentary on Graham Williams whenever the season 15 set rolled around?
Yeah, I think so. I think we would have always made a Graham film on one of the sets, whether it was 15 or 16. And in truth, it could have gone either. I think Graham's always been, as you say, a figure that we haven't really had a chance to get to know. We talk about his era a lot, and seasons 15 to 17 are very controversial at times. Much loved, but also an era where all these pressures are on the show. Star Wars has come out, inflation's sky high, everybody's going on strike all the time. And, he has a rough ride of it. And we have a tendency, I think, as a fandom to, over the years, we've exalted the Hinchcliffe era, quite rightly in lots of ways, but sometimes at the detriment of the 3 years that follow. And I think because Graham died at 45, he died in 1990. And what we often find for people who die kind of the bulk of the 90s is that fandom never got a real chance to fully get to know them. There were very few interviews with Graham. There's I think 3 or 4 filmed convention appearances that we use everything that we can do, a couple of audio interviews, but I think we never really got a chance to know him. And for me, that always represents an opportunity to tell a life story, to tell a very human life story. So I think for years I've been saying to Russell Minton, the boss of the collection, please let me do a Graham Williams doc. Please let me do a Graham Williams doc. And it kind of, he I think very kindly he'd been very happy with our John Nathan Turner doc and and as you say, the Elizabeth Sladen one that we did. And we'd kind of agreed to take the same kind of approach, the same kind of lens to Graham Williams. And it's ended up being our biggest one. It's 97 minutes long. We've got over 20 interviewees who I ran around the country filming with. So certainly, it's the biggest one I've done. It's been 2 years in the making from the very first conversation I had with Graham's widow, Jackie Williams, through to now. It's over 2 years now. And a lot of that was very gentle. What's the word? Was trying to be very gentle with our footprint on that. Trying to tread quite sensitively with the family, because it's still, I think, a very raw thing for them. I don't think you get over. Graham was 45. His kids were, I think, 5, 7, and 11 or so. So very young family being left behind. And I think we were acutely aware of that all the way through the process. But the film is very much the family. The family are just probably, certainly the most amazing family I've encountered in a long, long time. Just the love of that family for each other and for Graham is very much the heart of the film. I just also thinking, like, family's excellent. I'm glad that they're with us, but none of his script editors are with us anymore. Like, there's a lot of the work side of his time on Doctor Who it's tough to fill, because how do you get, you can't pull quotes from a Douglas Adams interview really much about, because he died very early as well. It's kind of tragic. So how did you sort of piece together the work side narrative of his life? Yeah. I think the helpful thing was I always knew that, a bit like the JNT one and a bit like the Liz Sladen one, the Doctor Who probably takes up about a third of this film. And I hope, and I think the lovely thing about making these films for this audience is I think that the people watching it come on board already with a sort of interest and affection for the era that a person represents. And so I think that means that they're interested to go away and learn about Graham's youth, about what made him, what factors created the person who made the Doctor Who that you see, and Graham's life beyond Doctor Who. So Doctor Who is the middle third, and I think actually, all 3 script editors are represented in some kind of way, whether it's us going into detail on them or interviews that have survived from them that give a bit of insight, particularly Anthony Reid Graham's second script editor, we have a nice interview that I think Ed Stradling filmed years ago.
Right.
So you still have those viewpoints. And then we spoke to Tom Baker, to Louise Jameson, and I'm very keen always to find people that haven't been spoken to before. So someone like Anne Richards, who was Graham's secretary in the office, who actually spent more time with Graham than anybody else, because she's the person on the other side of the desk when he comes in. And he might have had an argument with Tom Baker, comes and sits down and goes, and it was Anne who was there to pick it up. I think I said Anne Richards there. It's Anne Davis, actually.
Anne Davis, right.
Is Anne Davis. So we've tried to make sure there's a good mix-up. And I certainly felt like the Doctor Who side of things, there's a lot of stuff there that I've not encountered before. So I think I hope it'll be quite interesting and insightful for people.
Yeah, I feel like Tom Baker has mellowed a lot over the years, and whatever set twos he had when Graham was producer, I feel like Tom's become aware of what he was like back then and how he dealt with him. But what was it like talking to Tom about that time in his Doctor Who life with Graham Williams?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think Tom, you kind of see it in the way that his public relationship with Louise Jameson has shifted, and that they've kind of both been quite open. Particularly Louise has been quite open about the ups and downs that they had, in a spirit of reconciliation, in a spirit of saying, and now we work together and it's much easier. And I think Tom has mellowed, and I think in the doc he's very honest about Graham. He's very honest about what his first impressions were of Graham, and he's not particularly flattering about Graham at times in it. But I think that it's clear that Tom has, I think, some regrets about how he was to Graham, and that's something that we kind of explore in the film, and that he's very heartfelt in. So, I've interviewed Tom 3 or 4 times now, and it's always a joy, because you never quite, as you could imagine, you never quite know what you're going to get. But I think we got him in a very genuine mood, and he was ready to reflect on how he'd been with Graham. And I don't think that would have happened in the 80s or 90s, maybe even the noughties, but certainly that's something that Tom has had years to figure out. So I'm really glad. And again, Tom's not the villain of this piece. I think it's also a celebration of what Tom and Graham achieved together. But I think there's a really lovely moment in it later on where Tom, I think, genuinely reflects. And I'll leave that for you to find out about. But that was the moment during the interview that I thought, oh, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad. So I'll leave that to be discovered.
Right. I think it's fascinating. I mean, as you say, it's basically the middle third of this documentary is his Doctor Who bits. I mean, he was 32 when he took over Doctor Who, and Philip Hinchcliffe was like 27.
I think Graham might have been 31. Yeah, it was extremely young in terms of when he came into the office. Yeah. Incredible.
It's fascinating, I think, just seeing how young people were in the TV industry. I mean, nowadays Russell T Davies is in his 60s and he's taking over Doctor Who. Like it seems to be TV has moved up, but in the 70s, at that time when Graham Williams was producer, it was just a young person's game, wasn't it?
Well, I think there's a negative side to this. I mean, I think it's an amazing consistency that Verity Lambert was in her 20s, wasn't she? And Jonathan Turner was around about 30 when he got the job. I think it's not necessarily a good thing, because you have people who are being fast-tracked, and that seems vibrant and exciting. In Graham's case, he'd never produced anything before. Graham had been a script editor and had worked his way up, and we talk about this in the film, that there was a flavour at the time that if you're a producer of a show, you have to come from a kind of scripty kind of background. We're not looking for a production manager figure. We're looking for, which I guess is where John Nathan Turner was a bit different. That John hadn't come through a creative field. Kind of Philip had been a script editor at points before, and I think and Barry Letts, of course, had been directing, and I'm sure kind of was more creatively minded than John Nathan Turner was. But Graham, I think, was probably over promoted at that point in his career. He could have done with becoming producer of a smaller show. And BBC has a habit, sadly, that it will give somebody that job very young, and maybe if it doesn't work out perfectly, or just if there's a change in your friends at the top, then you're out. You know, and after Graham finished on Doctor Who, he never produced a big BBC show again, and there's a mirroring there to what happened to John Nathan Turner, I think, as well, where you stop being flavour of the month. And you look at the clock and you think, well, I'm only 40.
Right.
Well, you know, in Graham's case, he would have left Doctor Who in his mid-30s. And you're thinking, am I washed up at this point? So I think there's something to be said for maybe not throwing people so quickly into that massive job and then supporting them more after they've finished it. And that I think there was very little support like that for Graham, sadly, and I think it had an impact on him.
Retroactively, it's fascinating looking at that era. It's the it's the era that I watched when I started watching Doctor Who. Then I stopped watching it, and by the time I started watching it again, it was that era again. So those 3 years hold a very special place in my heart. But aside from that, I mean, it's remarkably progressive in its casting, I think, compared to the era that came before. There's a lot more female great roles for women and villains and everything. I mean, do you think this was a conscious decision on the part of Williams to sort of like, let's broaden the casting a little bit in this?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think he's doing quite a few things to differentiate it. You know, he's got a brief from the BBC of making it less violent. You know, the impact of Mary Whitehouse and the fallout of things around, say, the deadly assassin. You know, and the Doctor being strangled and drowned and all this. So I think Graham's trying to make a lighter show. I think he's trying to make a more family-friendly show, and we delve back into what's happening in his family life at the time. And you think, well, that's perfectly logical. He's got a young son that he shows the show to every Saturday night when it goes out, gauges his reaction, wants to know how scary it is. So I think he's making perhaps a less macho version of Doctor Who already. And then, as you say, there's certainly a tendency to give women strong voices, strong roles. Not just in terms of the baddies, but in terms of, Graham plays a huge part. He's kind of a key creator really behind Romana, behind both versions of Romana. And you think of what Romana is, that she's an equal to the Doctor. You know, she's literally from the same academy, from the same planet. And she can stand up to him and tell him what's what. And maybe there's a certain element of Graham that would love to be able to do that himself, to the leading man. But I think you can see that Graham is certainly progressive in terms of his treatment of women in that way. But I think the show, I mean, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Tom's first 3 seasons. But I think it's so refreshing that come season 15 onwards, the show is genuinely kind of untethered, that we talk about this being a series that can go anywhere, do anything. And actually, in reality, a lot of the time, Doctor Who, each era will find the thing it's really good at and then stick to that, largely stick to that territory, whether that's Troughton bases under siege or kind of Hinchcliffe kind of wonderfully evoking kind of classic horror and things like that. And with Graham's era, I think it's just mad. I think it's kind of batshit and wonderful.
Right.
And can go and has a kind of intergalactic quality that the show rarely has, that is exemplified by the Black and White Guardians and that key to time feeling of the whole universe being at the Doctor's disposal. It's a lot less earthbound, and that means that equally it's a much more challenging, ironically, it becomes a more challenging show for Graham to make, because everything is certainly more off-world. It feels to me that it's more ambitious in what production, what visual effects or design are having to step up to achieve. And I think maybe he was a bit naive. Sometimes Hinchcliffe would be very good at going to someone like Roger Murray Leach at the beginning of a story or at the scripting level and saying, at the story pitching level and saying, what do you think we can do well? Oh, we can do a good jungle alien planet. Oh, well, let's do Planet of Evil then.
Yeah.
I don't think Graham was checking with anybody, which I find kind of adorable and kind of wonderful in a way. But it does mean, I think you're seeing the inside of Graham's brain in many ways when you're looking at those 3 years. And the other thing is mythology. I think this is an Anthony Reid thing as well. But Graham has had a love of books, had a love of language, had a love of literature, and of the mythic. So even if it's just the ability as a producer to pick one script over another, you're starting to get things like the Minotaur legend coming into the Horns of Nimon, or like Jason and the Argonauts is in the underworld.
Yeah.
Things like that. I love that the show is suddenly that type of show, and that's down to Graham, really, I think.
Yeah, there's a certain fairy tale quality, I think, to Androids of Tara. I know it's not on the season 15 set, but that seems to be like just the prototypical Graham Williams story for me. There's a certain fairy tale in this. There's a lightness to it. It's entertaining. Yeah, it's a great time. It's a great time for Doctor Who. It kind of reminds me, oddly enough, of, like, I like to compare eras sometimes, and it reminds me of the Chris Chibnall era, in that he follows a very successful era, and he can't possibly hope to duplicate it. It has to go his own way, and then outside forces basically curtail his last season because, there's the inflation, there's the strike. In Chris Chibnall's case, it was COVID basically derailing the last season of Doctor Who. I mean, how do you think those outside forces for Graham Williams, running out of money basically before the end of his first season, factored into how he approached the industry, maybe?
Well, I think he has a really bad run of luck. I do. And Graham makes his own mistakes. And as I say, there is a naivety to what he's doing that I find charming. But I think that you look at how when Philip Hinchcliffe took over from Barry Letts, and Barry and Terence go to extremes to make sure that scripts are in place for that first year. Maybe they go too far because Philip and Bob Holmes find themselves having to rewrite a lot because it's not really what they wanted to do. And Graham has the opposite, that he comes through and the cupboard is bare. And I think everything has been put into Chalan Zawang Chiang, and the show's kind of forgotten that it has to carry on. But
Right.
I think he's building up from not much at that point. And I do think any producer dealing with, that period of the 70s, you're talking like 77, 78, 79, in the UK is going to kind of hell in a handbag at that point. And I think you think of the influence of something like Star Wars, where suddenly, if you're a fan of the show, Doctor Who feels a little bit cheaper than it probably did the week before you saw Star Wars.
Yep.
And then, things like Sharda, like Industrial Action stopping Sharda. You have other eras where, like, that could have happened to Greatest Show in the Galaxy, and John Nathan Turner finds a way. Graham, couldn't find a way with Sharda, and I guess, that's the only time it's happened, that the show just hasn't been finished, and that kind of thing could have happened quite a bit more than it did, to Graham. And certainly there are other shows, something like Invasion of Time only just happens by the skin of its teeth. So I think Armageddon Factor has a tough time, but it's you combine that with things like Nightmare of Eden, where Alan Bromley walks off, has a back and forth with Tom,
Right.
and walks off the set, and Graham has to take over as director. I think I just don't think any other Doctor Who producer has been through the wars like Graham, and you feel by the time he leaves the show in 79, he's just knackered. He's still, James Goss says this in our film, but he's still got the ideas. He's got all these ideas left. You get this impression, but he's just knackered. And that's really sad that the machine has chewed him up and spat him out.
Because he seems like a nice fellow. I mean, everyone says he's nice, and perhaps Tom Baker says he was too nice because he didn't offer the Tom was looking for an argument, basically, I think, and wanted somebody to stand up to him, and he never really got that with Graham. But I don't think that's a fault to say that Graham Williams was a nice man.
No, I think probably Tom could probably feel when he was being managed, and Graham would try and manage you. Graham would not say maybe what he thought, but would try and gently tiptoe around to find the way of making it sound like what you wanted to hear. But what he wanted to say, and I don't think that works. I think someone like Tom is, Tom's very intelligent. He's a very powerful figure as the show's lead, and I don't think that was going to work. And I think someone like Louise Jameson talks to us about Graham, being the kind of lovely figure who you would say, oh, do you want a cup of tea? You'd offer him a tea, but you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, this is the producer. This is my boss.
Right.
I don't think he was a very domineering figure, and that warmed him. That meant a lot of people warmed to him on that level. But I don't know. It's like being it's like being a politician or something like that. You think you probably just can't be incredibly nice and have this work. You probably need to, you probably need to be a bit tougher. And I think Graham was tough in his own way, but maybe not tough enough for that job.
Oftentimes when on documentaries like these, when you visit the families and everything, you find a whole lot of insights, and even just by looking at photos of them before and after Doctor Who, you really get an insight of who this person was. Was that the case when you visited the family and looked at little photos of Graham?
Yeah. So with Graham's family, my initial port of call was obviously his wife Jackie, who's done one Doctor Who documentary before. She pops up in Ed Stradling's A Matter of Time, which was on the season 16. I think we put it on 17 for the box set. And if Jackie had said no, if Jackie had said, I don't want you making a film about Graham, we probably just would have stopped. If she'd actively opposed it. And fortunately for me, we had a lovely chat on Zoom, and then what followed that was a chat with her and the three kids, with David and Rick and Katie. And I said to Jackie, I don't want to. This isn't me coming in and picking which kid should we interview. I said, we should have all three. They're all going to have their own perspectives, and they're all grown up now. They've got their own families, and all of them, I think, have this kind of perfect splintering of Graham. Like if you were to look at them, that they've all got an element of Graham that's very visible physically, and I think in their character. And so we had a big 2-hour chat on Zoom, just the four of us together, kind of me basically trying to prove I wasn't an arsehole and that we were going to be nice. And that, I think quite rightly, they wanted to tell a very honest, kind of clear story about Graham. They weren't interested in a puff piece, and that suits us, because we want to tell a realistic story from a position of love. And, because of that affection, you can go up and down. And so I knew it was going to be very emotional for them, having lost him as young as they did. So we did a weekend at Jackie's house where I said, let's all do it together. Let's have the four of you. We do it over a weekend. And that way, as we interview one of you, that person can leave the room and their family will be immediately there. Immediately you're into the arms of your loved ones. So I couldn't think of a better kind of comfort, a better kind of support mechanism than that, in terms of our duty of care as well. And so we just had this incredibly emotional weekend where I was several times weeping during the interviews, because you just thought this is incredibly touching, what the honesty and and how brave they were being. And at the end of the second day, I brought my scanner, because I hate taking photos away from people, because it's just nightmarish, the idea of something being damaged or lost or gone in the post. So I scanned hundreds of. They were very generous with Graham's photo albums and the family albums, so I just scanned everything. And that meant that in the film, we had hundreds of photos to choose from, and that's one of my favorite things. Actually, is sometimes it's very clear. If you're talking about the day that Jackie and Graham got married, you use a picture of their wedding day, and you have maybe half a dozen pictures that you've got that you pick the best one for each moment. But a lot of the time, it was finding an image that clearly isn't of that moment, but is still representative of that moment. Jackie talks about seeing Graham for the first time as he strolls across the road in front of her, smiling at her. And we found a picture from a different, not too dissimilar period of time, but from a different moment that you think, oh, that perfectly fits that. So to have that variety of photo choice was really amazing. So I think there'll be, there's very few photos in this that have been seen elsewhere. There's a lot of archive of Graham talking and other parts of his career, the clips of other shows and stuff as well. So, but I could have just kept scanning. If they'd given me more albums, I would have been there for weeks, just I want to have that one too, and that one, and that one, and that one. And they're big. We always scan them. I put them on 1600 DPI,
right.
So I end up with these massive, huge file sizes. because it means in the edit we can go all the way in on somebody's eyes. We can have complete flexibility, even though we're probably not going to do that on most of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad we did, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm looking forward to that one. It sounds like an epic film, and I whenever that comes out in North America, I look forward to it. Hopefully soon. I also look forward to the Lighthouse documentary about the making of Horror Fang Rock, where you take Toby Haydock and Louise Jameson to a lighthouse that was not seen in Horror Fang Rock, of course, because it was shot in a studio in Birmingham. But what was shooting that documentary like?
Oh, it's lovely. Yeah. So this one had a bit of a, I think, because we'd probably been commissioned for this about the same time as the Graham one, and obviously it's not as big a doc. It's like a 40, I think it's 42 minutes or so. The Lighthouse one, called Inside the Lighthouse, and the logic initially was, I hate it when we can't go anywhere. I hate it when we make films, and we don't do it this way, but I hate it when all you think I can do is go into the studio or into homes and, what am I going to do? What's the creative on this beyond graphics or doing something with the archive? What can I do that gives it an identity? And so Fang Rock on paper is quite tricky because, as you say, it's either lighthouse building interiors at Pebble Mill Studios in Birmingham, or it's even outside on the rocks is all filmed in the studio, but in Ealing on film. So where do we go? And initially, the idea was much madder. That you may remember at the end of the story, the Doctor, as they're departing, reads the poem, the Ballad of Flannan Isle, which is all about this idea of the kind of the door left ajar and the toppled chair, which I read up on and I realised, this is partly, Terence Dicks's inspiration, maybe Bob Holmes's inspiration in the commissioning of this 19th century story of 3 lighthouse keepers that went missing on a remote Outer Hebridean Scottish island of Flannan Isle, where it's this amazing story where the relief party come at the normal time to relieve the lighthouse keepers and find that the door of the lighthouse is unlocked and swinging in the wind. All of the coats are still up on the pegs, but the lighthouse is completely empty, and they think probably there's a storm and one of the chaps falls off a cliff and the other 2 maybe jump in to get him or something like that. But they're just not there. And I thought, how terrifying to be that first guy in the relief party, to be like, hello, is there anybody here? How completely terrifying. So, because we knew that was the birth of the story, I thought, well, maybe we could go there. And spent about a year planning a documentary where we would have been on the bones of our ass, because it would have been me and Toby, basically just me as the crew, probably just me and Toby and Louise, probably a drone operator as well, and we would have flown out to Scotland and then on in a helicopter or a rickety boat onto Flannan Isle to revisit this lighthouse, and we had permission to do it. It was going to happen, and then it was just that realization as you go through the logistics of it, of being told by the people, we realized that helicopter onto the island was going to be too expensive, and then the boat option meant that they said, we can do this, we can get you onto the island and you can afford it, but the weather's so unpredictable up here, in order to guarantee you a single filming day, you're going to have to allow for 7 days. So you're going to have to be here for 7 days in order to have one successful day, and then it's not, and even then it's not guaranteed. We might just have 7 days of rain and we won't be able to access the island. And at that point you kind of go, okay, well, if we had a massive budget, maybe we could, but we don't. So I had to it was gutting, actually. I had to stand down the whole thing and say, well, we just can't do this. And actually it's turned out much better, I think, in the end, because it's allowed the breadth of the documentary to be much wider. And I just thought, again, rather than going into the studio, having Toby with Louise, I thought, well, why can't it just be a jolly? Why can't it just be like more of a Louis Theroux style, 2 people spending a fun weekend together? And the setting of that is like a lighthouse B&B, essentially a lighthouse hotel that is a real place. It's the Bell 2 lighthouse in Beachy Head, which I'm told is the main location of the She Devils series that Tom Baker did in the 80s. The Life.
Oh, really? Yeah, Life and Loves the She Devils or whatever it was. Yeah.
That's the one, which I automatically kind of read as Sea Devils and think, no, it's not Sea Devils, not Sea Devils. And it's this beautiful, like, not too far from Eastbourne, I think, but this beautiful, beautiful lighthouse on the edge of a cliff where, I think 10 years ago, they had to move the lighthouse physically away from the cliff edge because the erosion was getting too close.
Oh, wow.
It seems like an unsustainable thing to have to do to your home. But we just used that then for Toby and Lou to have just an amazing weekend. And at every opportunity we're saying, so how about Fang Rock? And doing it that way meant we could afford more of a guest cast returning. So we've got like Annette Woolett, who was Adelaide, and John Abbott, who was young Vince. And we did a nice thing that I'd seen articles in Doctor Who magazine where Anthony Lamb and Gavin Reimel had recreated Doctor Who sets in CG. And I thought, particularly with Fang Rock, I think the set's really interesting because it's such a convincing vertical space that Paddy Russell creates, even though obviously it's a horizontal space in a studio, each room side by side. And that's quite a hard thing to visualize when you're used to the Doctor and Leela run up one staircase, and they arrive into another set. So I thought the best way would be to commission these guys to create a CG walkthrough. So we never would have been able to afford that if we'd gone to the Outer Hebrides.
Right.
And so that's a benefit. And it meant that we could have a laptop there for Lou and Toby to actually kind of do a walkthrough. I think they compare it to playing Doom on a computer.
Right.
And in my head, that's not only a way of saying to the viewer, you may not have imagined it like this, but this is what it looked like, and that's based specifically on the designs, on the studio floor designs that we have, where you can see to the centimeter. You can see this is how the set was laid out, so it's not guesswork. And I think actually that was really helpful for Louise because it suddenly puts you back into your own footsteps and into your memories, and it kind of triggers, I think, for her a real realization and memory about sitting down with Tom for a particular conversation, and she's able to say, "These are the steps. We sat on that step there."
Right.
And we talked about this. And so I think it worked really well. And honestly, it's the kind of thing, if the guys are happy to do it, that we'd like to do on future sets. I think where the set, the designed set in the studio is a kind of key part of that. I don't know if you do it with every story. You don't necessarily need to see the Doctor's lab or whatever. But if it's a fun set, I think it'd be a lovely thing to do.
Yeah, you're right. It does jog a memory, just a visual of the actual studio itself, because what we see on TV is entirely different from what is seen by the actors back in the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to do it you think of particularly 60s stories where it's so set based. To see something like the Keys of Marinus, because that's so insane, isn't it? In terms of they go from this planet to this planet, and you think, well, that planet's next door to that planet. Or to do it with Marco Polo or something like that. That would be fascinating. So hopefully that will be a nice first for us, and there's no reason why we can't do that again, I think.
You're very public in your teasing of projects that you're currently working on and such, but of course never actually revealing what documentaries and what box sets you are actually going to work on that day. Nor am I going to ask you such intricate details today, but I will ask how many right now, as of recording in early March 2024, how many different documentaries for how many different box sets are you currently have on the go right now? Is it in multiples?
Yeah, well, this is the good thing that actually it's become a bit easier to talk about these things, I think, in some ways, because we're working on stuff for so many different sets that actually, if somebody saw us on location next week, then it would not be helpful to them in terms of knowing what the next box set is or what the box set after that is, because at the moment everything is in flux. And it's not just a sense of we're working on the next two, it's we're working on stuff that's way down the line. We don't even know when that might be released. And certainly I think I worked out the other day, I think after Graham and Fang Rock, I think that we've got 8 that me personally, that Moon Balloon, my company, is working on in some form. And those 8, I mean, on top of that may well become 9 or 10 or 11 in the next few weeks. And that is across, I think that's across like 6 sets or so.
Wow.
So there's quite a lot where we might be doing one kind of big doc for a set in advance. And then as we get closer to that set, we might do add a making of to that or something like that. But I think there are certain key figures that we're looking at, thinking we love making these biography films. We love stretching out into somebody's whole career, into their whole lives. And so you're going to want to do that. There are certain figures involved in the show that you can probably quite easily guess, what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And if that person is no longer with us, I think that's the only time you can really do this and tell a complete story of somebody's life. So I think there's a lot of good faith put in us by the BBC now to say this is working. These sets are working and people like them. So let's keep going. Let's keep pushing on this, and so long may it continue.
I'll close by wrapping it around to Gallifrey 1 when you were there, and I asked you then, whenever that was, 2018, 2019, can't quite remember when. And I think, I can't remember if you brought it up or if I did, about the possibility that once the classic series is done, broaching the topic of quote unquote the new series, which is 20 years old now as well, and doing box sets on, like, say, Christopher Eccleston's first series, and what you would do with that, and you expressed kind of enthusiasm to do that. Has your opinion changed over the years about, like, doing such documentaries and such for Modern Who?
Oh, not at all, not at all. No, I mean the enthusiasm is just as much there. I'm currently rewatching all of post 2005 Who with my daughter Edie, who's 5. So we're up to, we just watched Last of the Time Lords. So she's got Voyage of the Damned over, like, probably towards the end of the week to watch. And then I think we'll pause after Voyage and do a kind of, I've said to her, we're going to do a flashback mini season where we're going to suddenly go back and watch An Unearthly Child and Tomb of the Cybermen and maybe Terror of the Autons or something, and then do Partners in Time. So I'm kind of sugaring the pill slightly for now. I'm thinking, because you don't want to just make her watch the whole of season 1, the whole of 63, 64. Yeah, I want to tread carefully. I see it all as one big show. So the idea that we would only do the classic series, I find slightly weird, but then until it gets commissioned, I don't know. So at the moment, I would absolutely be volunteering. And I've always said that it's slightly different with the new series, I think, because certainly in the first, until I guess kind of mid Matt Smith, you've got Confidential giving you that weekly, here's literally how we did this, how we did that. But I think I've always said it feels like an opportunity to do just big blockbuster feature length docs, taking an overview of the whole season and the whole experience. So I'd always be saying we need like a 2005 Doctor Who as a 3.5 hour doc or something like that.
Right.
That's always been my logic, as not because it just seems mad to make a documentary just about Dalek or something. Even though I look at it, you think, well, that that doesn't fit this particular assignment, I think. So I would love to, but I think everybody would say we've got our hands full as it is. So I don't think anybody's in a crazy rush to do anything, and we'll see how it goes.
Right. Well, we're already halfway there with over halfway there with the classic series, and you've got 6 to perhaps 12 different projects on the go. So maybe we'll touch base again in another 5 years and see where those projects are.
Absolutely.
Season 15 box set is out March 18th in the UK. Chris Chapman, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris, very much. I enjoyed. It's like 90 odd minutes is that Graham Williams documentary, feature-length thing that they had at even had a BFI showing, and looking forward to it. Very much looking forward to it. I'm not gonna go so far as to order the UK version to get it early, because I don't want to have that big giant thing on my bookshelf, you know. Like the season 2 one sticks out a little bit, and I don't like it. So I will wait. Like a patient, good consumer, and until July the 9th or something when it finally shows up here in North America, and that's what I'll do. But so anyway, thanks for listening to this epically long episode. Next week, you two cats are going to be in the same room because Chris is visiting Warren.
This video will look very strange. It'll
Yeah,
be probably Chris behind me.
It'll be so odd.
Obscured by me, basically.
It will be like a Pet Shop Boys video where like there will be one guy in front, the other guy
I'll
will
have to
just
move
be-
my mic over here and then
Yeah.
lean. It's not going to work. But
It'll be odd. It'll be very odd.
We'll have to set it up like the poster art for the movie Twins.
Just like that.
no, we're not going to do that.
I was thinking maybe forced perspective, like Gandalf and Frodo in the same shot, where we basically.
But that would
have-
make Chris
That-
even
that
more
sounds- that
maybe
sounds
10
like-
feet tall as opposed
No,
to
no,
way more work.
it will be opposite, where Chris will then look normal size compared
okay.
to you.
Yes,
I mean, just
or
saying.
possibly even shorter. But
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, just make sure you arrive precisely when you need to. That's the important thing here.
Yeah.
yes, indeed.
Nice work. Also, next week we're recording this. Pretty quick turnaround, but our Jamie Childs mini scope is going to be recorded next week and feature on next week's episode. As well, of course, we break down everything you missed and all the Easter eggs in the Disney Plus trailer that's going to drop on Friday.
Zaprudering.
Yeah, so that's all on. Well, we will do a frame-by-frame analysis of that and
Of
if
the
there
drum
are-
kit.
of the drum kit, especially if it's in that trailer. So stay tuned to next week's episode for that. Until next time, I'm Steven in Edmonton.
We're in Vancouver.
And Chris in Edmonton.
So long for now.